Okay.
It's World War III watch. Let's just face it. It's already started. Now more than ever, it seems that we're in the starting point of it. We're here, co-host Craig Pasta Jardula. We have guest correspondent Don DeBar with us, breaking down what's been transpiring over the last less than 24 hours with Iran getting attacked, getting striked on by Israel, and how we are responding to this, how the mainstream's responding to this, Trump's maneuvering, and how the media seems like they're going to be manufacturing right now in real time public consent for World War III. I'll pass it to you, Don. What's your initial takes on what's been transpiring here?
We've had some, I'd say, false starts before on the, path to Armageddon with Israel bombing Iran and some of the other crazy stuff that they've done either on their own or playing proxy to the United States. But just yesterday, a lot of the analysts or people that, that we all know that were saying this wouldn't happen. It was bluster and, whatever. Others were warning that this is how dangerous this is, basically, and that it seemed like Netanyahu and or Trump or some grouping with one or the other fronting was determined to get here. And, we woke up in the middle of the night. That's when I found out that, that Netanyahu had bombed Tehran and elsewhere in Iran, tried to decapitate the military somewhat successfully. I don't know what the command structure was like, but there were several key officers that were taken out, apparently. And then, Iran's options, even if it were, had the military power of the United States scaled down, they're either to let's have a full war here now, or let's find some way to finesse this and avoid it and try to, find some deterrence to impose on the other side in the process. This is kind of the same game that Russia's been, playing in Ukraine and elsewhere, really, over the last 20-something years, maybe 30 years. And the China's had to play also with Tehran and the South China Sea and elsewhere. You have an empire that has been, it's the successor to a series of empires that are, in one sense or another, the successor to the Roman Empire. The U.S. Empire is sort of an agglomeration of the British and Dutch and Spanish and, other European empires. And there was a product of the consolidation process that took place over the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries. And suddenly, having reached almost global hegemony, it looked like it was within reach in 1991. It started to wane, and the limits of it have been becoming more and more apparent. The rise of BRICS, the rise of the idea of multipolarity generally as a human right, the alliances that have been building and the cracks of the various sanctions regimes and wars conducted by the U.S. and its allies. The result of the now for almost 50 years of austerity on their home populations in Europe and the U.S., both in terms of how that translates into their willingness to support the kinds of adventures that have been the norm over the last period, certainly since World War II, and to even give more. You've been seeing pushback in Europe now for a good 15, 20 years over that stuff. And in the United States, we've seen it flare up a few times around the, let's say in Seattle in the 1990s and the early 2000s around Iraq and, all the way through Occupy Wall Street and now, the last few years or 5-6 years ago now, Black Lives Matter and in the streets today even. these needs that are unsatisfied and actually created by the misallocation and theft of our resources, instead of being applied to maintaining what seems like an unmaintainable position of dominance in the world. We heard our friend, you get behind their eyes what goes on in their head, and they'll tell you dominance. They're like overgrown, dogs or wolves or bears or some crude, stupid, angry animal is cruising for beef or something. This is in the 21st century, as we have spacecraft, broaching the limits of the solar system. This is what is running the collective labor and capital of humanity and our planet. They want dominance. So, as that becomes more unsustainable and people are less willing to sacrifice and increase the sacrifice, you're seeing these cracks everywhere.
Yeah.
There are people in the street because of immigration, okay? And they're ready to take on the police. This is what they say they're there for. They're witnessing for the last 2 years and change an actual genocide on their own TV sets. And while they march here and there, they're not throwing their bodies on it like they're doing right now in Los Angeles and some other places. This war that we see, it's developing here right now, let alone the war that has been underway as a hot war for the last, it'll be 3 years in February, or 4 years. 4 years in February. They're not throwing their bodies on that at all. And as a matter of fact, a good portion of the people who are out there for the human rights of people who are undocumented aren't really worried about the human rights of most of humanity getting wiped out in a nuclear war, and the fact that our government is toying with that for the private interests of a few people. I mean, the whole thing is crazy looking at it.
Yeah.
And how do you figure out where the breakpoints are, where to push, who to ally with, and what program to adopt in that alliance? It's a very difficult calculus, and there's an awful lot of contradiction among all the people that we've been used to, or at least that I've been used to being an ally with, over the last 50 years. And particularly that contradiction has been.
I have an answer, by the way.
Say again?
I have an answer who you align with. You align with Don, Matt, and Pasta, because we're going to have the conversations that need to be had, right, to get to the bottom of this. I think that there's, it is crazy, and I'm glad that you kind of pointed it out that this is just nuts. I mean, what's going on? However, I would say that, a lot of these kids that are out there in LA, and I haven't got a chance to get out there, but, I noticed some groups out there. Obviously, I know who some of the groups are out there, and, I was going to point out the fact that, the left is so disorganized. There's groups that don't even talk to each other. I'm saying? They're not on page. I think the important messages will be missed. But a lot of these kids who are enraged about what is going on with immigration and Donald Trump sending the ICE task, or at least appearing, I think it's more of a smokescreen. I don't think he's going to ever get to the numbers that the Deporter-in-Chief Obama gets to. But either way, a lot of those kids did align with the Israel-Gaza situation. So I think there is a chance for them to pay attention to what's going on right now the more we get out there and talk about these things.
Being allied is one thing. We were in Chicago. We saw what, there were a lot of young people that were in the street during the Democratic convention on behalf of the people of Gaza and Palestinian people in general. It's true. Look at the fury right now and compare that to the mood of the people then. Also, more importantly, look at the amount of energy. Look at the activists, quote unquote, that are at the periphery of the Democratic Party, who are also deeply embedded in all of these other movements around the issue of this friggin' parade in Washington, D.C. That much more oxygen is being given to, Trump is trying to have a Hitlerite birthday party for himself in Washington, D.C. that's going to make the streets collapse and bankrupt, the nearest 12 municipalities, compared to, by the way, Netanyahu just tried to light a match to the gasoline that is soaking World War III. There's a whole distortion and you have this problem going around, by the way. If you have two cohorts, to simplify it, and put red and blue shirts on them that are out here and they focus on electoral politics and the politics of the moment in the media, television or whatever, and then you look at these actual issues and who's adopted what and what they say, you can almost see like the ghost of these two cohorts operating inside those things. And I haven't seen any of these movements that should happen. The movement against apartheid in Israel, let alone the genocide. The movement against the war being imposed on Iran and others, the takedown of Syria, all the horrors that have happened, since 2001, if you want to start there, or 1948, if you want to start there, wherever. You don't see that kind of energy applied to that you see, like, for example, with respect to the stupid parade or with respect to ICE and deportations. And so,
well, the social engineers, they know exactly which
I know that part,
right?
I know that part. I'm talking about this part. When you go into the leadership and talk to the people in the movements, quote unquote, today, okay, and raise that point, you'll find that one of the reasons is that they identify with that set of arguments more than that set of arguments, when both sets of arguments are intended for the other audience and not to solve the problem, which tells you they don't really understand what the fuck they're looking at. And that's the problem for me that I see.
Well, I was going to also say racism is a big driver for young kids to get them out of there. They got out in the streets during George Floyd because of what was racism, right? And now here it is again. It's xenophobia, racism again. They're deporting the brown man. So I mean, there is something like, I don't know, in some situations, very narcissistic why a person wants to take to the streets sometimes, because they want to prove that they're not one of the bad ones that are racist like their fathers and their forefathers. And,
Malcolm and Martin Luther King and a whole legion of others teach us that if you're not looking at colonialism and imperialism while you look at racism, then you don't know what the fuck you're looking at.
No, and that's
got to be focused more on classism. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's exactly the point, Don. That's Martin Luther King saying that. It's not just that was his breaking point. That was his aha moment. I think in his last year of life, his aha moment was that it's all connected, man. But it's worse than it's all connected, man. It's that the source of the problem comes from the military dominance on the planet, and we have to go battle that. And then, of course, when you start to turn your attention there, you get even more pushback. You get more punishment, more making an example of. And then, of course, that means you're onto something, right? The closer you get to the source of the problem, and the more you're getting close, because you're getting more pushback, more consequences. So how do we get the people in the street to understand what they're more about, why they're in the street, beyond that emotion that was given to them when they were told by their tribe it's time to go, when they don't understand historical context? I think the way we can do that might be to look back at a time where they might have missed it then, but it's easier to see in the rearview mirror rather than in the moment. In the moment, we're very emotional. So going back to the Israel-Iran situation now, we understand that this trick, they are tricking us. We've done this over and over, 6-7 wars in 5 years. We've done this over and over. This is, I would pull this out for people. I would say, look, this was 2002. This is Israel putting pressure on U.S. to strike Iraq. So I think that the people right now can agree, now that was 2002, it's 2025, we can agree that there were no weapons of mass destruction. It's not such a crazy idea to say that they lied us into something. 1 million Iraqis killed for no reason, manufactured this war on terror. You could talk to pretty much anyone that way, and they would have to agree with that. Not too many people would be like, no, we that was the right thing. So they're doing it again. Netanyahu speaking like this, you can't tell. You can't tell what year this clip took place in, but this is Netanyahu. I think this is a more recent one, but he does this every single time. Here we go.
The Middle East, Iran's axis of terror confronts America, Israel, and our Arab friends. This is not a clash of civilizations. It's a clash between barbarism and civilization.
So if we can let people know little by like that they're hitting us against each other, they're manufacturing consent for another war that's not, we're on the wrong side of it, and both parties are doing it, then they can maybe start to second guess when their party says to them, we're fighting, whether it's Bernie or AOC telling you we're fighting the oligarchy, stop Trump, we have to say, wait a minute, we need to fight the whole thing. So I don't know, maybe it's just one conversation at a time, but these two things are happening simultaneously right now, but it's all connected. Like, it's all connected, man. We need to have these conversations. And I don't know if it's too late, because tomorrow is June 14th, and there's so many people who are going to be outside without a clue of what is actually happening, but they are certainly pissed about something.
Well, first of all, Netanyahu definitely knows about barbarism. That's the same stuff he was saying today. He's been saying since yesterday and today, the rap about weapons of mass destruction from 2002 and 3, that Iran is 6 minutes from being able to produce at least 9 or 19 nuclear weapons. I forget what number he made up. And that the most dangerous regime in the world cannot be allowed to have the most dangerous weapons in the world. And so we prevented that from happening. That's his rap. That someone appointed him, like they appointed Bush and Obama and a dozen other, I want to say lessers if you could find them, to be the guardians of the planet by bombing the shit out of people, whenever it suited their interests. I don't know what kind of a response Iran can give that doesn't produce an escalation. Even if they were to sit on their hands, that invites an escalation. Of course, the minute you blow up something inside Israel, the money starts flowing in the United States, and the TV hand-wringing begins, and all of that, and the flag of anti-Semitism is waved by people who are afraid of it, and others who actually harbor those feelings. They use it. It's another, pair of cohorts at each other's throats that have really little to do with the actual problem at hand, but they are able to stifle a solution of the problem at hand by, putting the focus, just making this the shiny thing. We're really in a very dangerous position, and I'm not seeing a whole lot of responsible players in Washington or anywhere really in Europe outside of Russia, and we need to find some pretty goddamn soon, or there's not going to. We are literally risking extermination. Yeah. And we ain't got a lot of time. And if you look around the set of people that any of us know, there are very few people that even understand like human society at that level where such a thing is possible, let alone where the mechanism for it has been designed, built, and deployed, and is now activated.
I mean, we have a couple people that have been consistent every time. We know Glenn Greenwald has been on this, and he gave a shout out. I like this, so this made me feel like good, man. He's looking out for some of the people that don't get as much, attention that he gets. And I've been following this guy, this Squirrel that says there's no Trump turn on Netanyahu, just like there wasn't a real permanent ceasefire in January. This is all bullshit. Pretense ahead of the joint U.S.-Israel war on Iran is now imminent. And then if you look at the bottom, it's May 9th. So Squirrel put this out May 9th, and Glenn Greenwald is highlighting this. So I'll just read the bottom of Squirrel's tweet that they're pathetically trying to establish the element of surprise ahead of the launch, but you would have to be an effing idiot to fall for it. Glenn Greenwald says squirrels of profit when virtually everyone believed there was some Trump Netanyahu split, and Trump was determined to prevent Israel from bombing Iran. This is the 5D chess we talk about, 6D chess. It's not real. Only to now learn that the whole thing was a ruse, and the U.S. and Israel jointly planned the attack. We're not being pressured into it. We are planning it. And like you said, Don, not too many people are getting this right, or at the right time. But even if it's too late, they're still not getting it right.
I think the argument is misplaced. That's part of the reason. For an example, we've got the situation that just occurred with the attack on the strategic bombers of Russia's Air Force, the part of the nuclear, deterrence. For people that don't understand, when you have two countries that have oodles of nuclear weapons that can destroy the other and pretty much everything else, but just the push of a button and the passage of an hour or two. And the primary deterrence to stopping them, the primary thing stopping them from doing it to their enemy, if it isn't morality, is the knowledge that as soon as that enterprise is undertaken, as soon as you launch the material, the other side, having the capacity to strike back, is going to strike back. The doctrine was called mutually assured destruction. It's a legacy. It was born in the post World War II era, in the so-called Cold War, and in essence, what said that the reason that you're not going to blow me up is because I'm going to blow you up, and as long as I can blow you up, you won't blow me up. Yeah. And so it's been acknowledged in treaties and agreements and conversation, generally polite talk among the upper echelons of power, that one thing you don't do is compromise the strategic deterrence of the other party, because it must say to them, these guys are coming in on first strike. I now have to fire all my stuff. And yet, this is exactly what was done a week and a half ago with an attempt to take out an entire, I don't know what the term is, wing, squadron, a whole chunk.
Triad.
Yeah, of their nuclear defense. And is in a surprise attack, no less. So, which leaves, someone sitting on the ground who's in charge of making sure Russia doesn't get destroyed without destroying the guys doing it, like 6 minutes or something to decide whether or not to push that irretrievable launch button. They did this a week and a half ago. So then the question becomes, well, who did it? And who's capable of doing it? Now, we know Donald Trump ran as a presidential candidate both times, as a matter of fact, warning of the dangers of a war with Russia. In this particular case, warning of the war that has been undertaken with Russia, and of the absolute need to end it immediately because it threatens humanity's existence. And this was one of the things that got him elected. There's a large piece of the population that bought that, and that was why they voted for him. And yet, this happened. And it is clear to anyone with any understanding of the mechanical processes involved that this happened with the deep involvement of U.S. intelligence, U.S. military, U.S. intelligence and military resources, and whomever else, MI6, your mama intel from some winky dink, whatever.
The West.
The United States helped or itself engineered this. Now, the question becomes, did they do this in the chain of command? In other words, is this Trump's okie doke, or is this thing that operates? No, Trump, we don't give a shit about him. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Is that what's happening? Now, here's the problem. We can argue about that shit all we want. We don't know. And here's the fact. It doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter who said let's do this and who didn't, who would like to see it happen and who wouldn't. The people in power, whoever they are, have their hands on the button and were able to do this. And our job is to stop them from doing it any further.
Yeah.
So the only relevance of who's on which side is, well, which one of them should we take our case to and hope that they will fix this, which means we have to rely on someone else to do it. And the problem is there's nobody we can rely on.
Yeah.
Which brings us to an interesting point in our history, which is that this is something that we have to fix ourselves and that we have to do pretty goddamn soon. And we have nothing to model from. We have very little actual information about the operations of all of these things other than the crap we see on television, read the newspaper or whatever. And again, we have very little time.
Yeah. And let's be honest too, though, technically, and I mean technically, what technically? Trump can turn off the spigot tomorrow without any need from. Well, wait.
Legally, he can, yes.
I said technically, Don. Hold on a second. Not the forces that be. It's kind of like Zelensky cannot. Zelensky technically can sign a surrender, but the Azov battalion and his goons won't let him. They'll kill him. So he can't really. I mean,
right.
Technically, Donald Trump, because he's the president of the United States, can turn off the spigot immediately. And I think a lot of people expected him when he's saying, I'll end it in 24 hours. Like, that's what he could do. That's what he's going to do it. But then he gets in and he shows us that he can't do it, right? Because somebody else, whoever's controlling the things, you know, even mainstream voices like Judge Knapp and all these other guys are believing that Donald Trump's not in control, that somebody else is, which is a big thing to ask. Because when you start talking about that taking out the triad of the nuclear weapon, especially with the treaty sign that we leave our bombers out in the open, and you do that, right? Yeah. Like the people in Russia that are in the know are not stupid. With the assassination attempt of a bunch of drones coming near his helicopter too as well.
Yep.
Donald Trump, know or not know, is in the big picture important, because if he didn't, then it just proves that there's a government within the government running things. And Donald Trump was tasked to get rid of it. And he's, in fact, just, capitulating towards it.
I mean, I think that's the case. That's what I'm saying. That's the problem we have. Suppose he goes on television tomorrow and says, look, Iran's saying that I could, do this. Legally, I can do it. I had enough contacts here in the government of people that I trusted that I thought would do their job when I gave them instructions. I can't do it. My going here and going on television even means they're going to try to shoot me. The only thing I can do is ask you all to go in the street and follow me. Now, right, okay, where does that leave you? Is it a fake to overthrow the constitutional order, or is it an end run around the overthrown formerly constitutional order to try to get to a place where there's no war? And how do we make a determination about that?
Well, we make the determination. We already know the guy's full of shit, and that's
that doesn't mean. But supposing, I mean, they're all full of shit. They're all power hungry. They're all sociopaths. And out of the one being full of shit, he's the only one that said a war with Russia is a bad idea. Yeah. So, well, he's full of shit, and they may be crazy, but these people are definitely crazy, whether they're full of shit or not, because they don't think a war.
There's been other voices who've been saying this is a bad idea before it happened. We don't need him coming along and saying, oh, this is a bad idea. No, they're not following through with anything, because now more. Wait, but him saying that, and the narrative management saying this one thing and doing another is completely bad, because then he gets the population to make excuses for doing those actions.
I'm not talking about making excuses. I'm talking about we're running out of time for excuses.
I get that. I agree with that.
All right. So he's full of shit. We ignore him. Next, what do we do?
Well, whatever the case may be, we have to acknowledge the fact that the solutions come outside the two-party duopoly.
Yeah, okay. Everybody.
No matter what, no matter what, it has to happen. It's a form of a revolution, Matt. I'm sorry, go ahead, buddy.
No, I'm going to suggest this. If we all agree that the people have to act outside of this system, then in order to be a stronger movement, we have to. And I think this is the theme of today's discussion: is how do we get people aligned? How do you do that? Well, since there's still so many people thinking Trump is playing 3D, 5D, 6D, 7D chess. maybe the best way to get them is, rather than saying your guy's a son of a bitch and he's a sociopath like the rest, that's not going to get them. What if you go with, because it doesn't really matter which way it is. The point is he can't do anything. So let's tell them he can't do anything. He tried. He can't. He thought he had more power. He doesn't. What? Let's go with that. And maybe they'll be more willing to listen. The only way we can stop the annihilation of the planet is we have to go up against the entire duopoly, the entire oligarchy together. That Trump, even if he means well, he can't do it. By the way, there's no U.S. president ever who's ever since JFK, and we saw what happened to him. You're not allowed to say, Israel, you got this on your own. We're going to sit this one out. You can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that. So even when he's lying and saying yesterday, Trump said we didn't know about this. He couldn't even do that. He had a backstep, and we played that clip earlier that everyone went on Fox, and even the CNN reporters, Dana Bash is putting stuff out. This is, by the way, I'm going to put this one up. This is damage control, because Trump was not even allowed to say we didn't know. It's not really us, even though we know that he knows it is, but he wasn't even allowed to do that. Dana Bash had to correct it. Hey guys, just so you know, I talked to Trump. So all that stuff you heard about him not knowing or not being part of this, he is. And he told me that the U.S. supports Israel and called the strikes on Iran last night very successful attack. Well, we of course support Israel, obviously, and supported it. Obviously, it has to have obviously in there, and support it like nobody's ever supported it. There we go. Trump said during our brief phone call. That's what I called damage control. Now, Craig, I ask you, rather than going off of this and saying what a piece of ass Trump is for deliberately defying and just this so disgusting that he's saying, yeah, let's go all in. Rather than going that way, why don't we have the conversation with the Trump people and tell them he tried to get out? Maybe, we don't know. But the point is, he can't do anything else but say we support Israel no matter what. That's the problem. There's no way around that. There's no president that's allowed to do otherwise, or you end up like JFK. Thoughts on that?
Well, I think that we have to identify where people are right now, especially after the Palantir situation, right? Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. You're talking to somebody who always wants to talk to the white belts, and if it's more convincing, and I do have it open. And once again, I don't, I yell and scream he's full of shit, but I do it in a very nice way. I still have a lot of Trump people I talk to. I do it at a lot of Trump events. I speak, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, come on. You know what I'm saying? I do it on my radio show, right, when a Trump person calls on in. So, I mean, there is a way to talk about it. But I think right now the assessment has to be, are there enough people who said, okay, Mr. Leahy, they crossed the shit line, right? Like, you don't cross my shit line, we don't cross yours, Ricky. But that crap line has been crossed with the Palantir collecting data, I think, from a lot of people. So do we build our movement with those people and going, okay, you know what I'm saying? There's only so much we can do, right? You know, people are going to trust the plan. You know what I mean? Trust the plan no matter what. So those people, we can't get them, but we don't necessarily need them. And, I think there's also a lane to hit back hard at the MAGA media, because they're not media. They're cheerleaders, and they're sucking up all the oxygen out of the room, and they've gotten a lot of help from Elon Musk, and we have to combat their issues, because let's not forget that the fourth estate, no matter at what level, right, its job is to hold the government accountable. And you can't do that if you're rooting for Donald Trump, because right now he is the government. So, I mean, we need assessments all around, but we just need to continue to have these conversations. I think that's the most important thing.
So you have a condition where you've got two major cohorts who are sort of, focused on each other as enemy, whereas the troops of the enemy, or the suckers, or whatever of the enemy. And in each case, the numbers of among each of those two groups, do you have faith in the government or the institutions or whatever? The no's outweigh the yeses by like a bazillion.
Yeah,
80%. People think, everyone in Congress is a crook. 6% trust the media, like that. Yeah. Whether you're this side or that side. Was this election stolen? Yes. Who won the other side? Democrat or Republican? If a Republican won, a Democrat says it was stolen. A Democrat won, a Republican says that nobody has faith in the integrity of the elections or any of the institutions. So that's the soil that everything else takes place in. Now you've got a situation where, on the one hand, the people that supposedly will do what they promise are out of office because they haven't done that in decades, except for the bad things. And the one who promised some things and has been delivering the bad things too. On the other, their two groups have no real affinity for the institution. The Democrats are holding themselves out now as we're going to be the saviors of the institution, democracy, and et cetera, the Constitution, et cetera. The Republicans, again, the supporters of Trump, see themselves at playing the same role. In each case, what's being advocated before them and with their support is that the only solution to your problem is extra constitutional. It's outside. It's, in other words, the only way to save the country from the communist alien protesters, which is what the Trump people are being fed, is to send in the military, whether it's legal or not, to maybe dissolve. If you ask them about dissolving Congress by presidential proclamation, that would probably get a very high positive among that group of people, for example. And the other group of people have already been willing, you've seen, to support and or commit any sin to the Constitution or democracy possible to keep Trump out of office.
Yeah.
So you kind of have already, I won't say cheapened, because it was pretty damn cheap at the beginning. Being built on genocide and slavery and all, but to in essence abandon really any pretense at a requirement to follow the constitutional order at this moment, with public sentiment being that the institutions really don't deliver anyway. They're not, it's a very dangerous moment for any kind of demagoguery that ends up poking its head up, floating to the top of the sewage, so to speak.